Go.
Hello, everyone. I'm speaking to you from 40 seconds in the future when you'll probably be picking this up. I'm Alistair.
I'm Marguerite. Hello.
And it is our singular pleasure this week, even though it is apparently not Twitch's at all, to welcome the amazing SB Divya to the show, who is an old friend of ours and also one of our editors at Escape Artists, and has also written the amazing new novel, Machine Hood. So.
Oh. Was that my cue? Did I miss my cue?
Your cue, yeah.
Okay. You have to put your headphones on for the cue. Okay. We're going to talk to Divya now.
It's fine.
And hope that the video comes across a little bit better. All right. I can push
Hi, Divya. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Hey. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully.
In spite of Twitch being uncooperative.
Yeah, Twitch is definitely being uncooperative. So, why don't you introduce Divya?
Divya, like I say, is one of our co-editors on Escape Pod, which is our Hugo-nominated twice now short fiction podcast, and is one of the most relentlessly talented and professional people I know. And is just instantly... You know how some people are instantly reassuring? I didn't tell Divya that I was going to do this, but about 3-4 years ago, she came up to us at the convention and went, so there's a few problems with Escape Pod. And we were like, okay. And it's cool, though, because I've taken over. And we were like, cool. Do you need anything from us? No, I'm good. And that was literally the conversation. And
yeah, it works really well.
Divya and Mer have been in place ever since, and the Escape Pod continues to go from strength to strength. We have, like I say, the 15th anniversary anthology out, which is going great.
Okay, thanks for letting us know.
And the show's what episode number are you guys on now? It's getting within sight of 800, isn't it?
750, 80 something.
50, 80
750, 80. Don't
yeah.
this week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm really good at math.
But yeah, we wanted to have you on firstly because you're awesome. You've been on before, and secondly because you have your first full-length novel out this very day.
Yeah, I'll show it off to everyone.
Please
to
do.
Make sure it gets on camera.
I'm
so
apologizing in advance because I'm messing with the audio a little bit to try and make it better. So if it's
how nice is that?
You have a nice hardback too.
Inlaid and glossy.
It's all glossy and shiny.
Brilliant.
Super shiny.
So tell us
Very
about
happy.
it.
So my novel, Machine Hood, is a science fiction story that takes place in 2095. It is a fairly realistic science fiction future, not particularly post-apocalyptic, not terribly dystopian, maybe mildly dystopian, depending on your point of view. You know, if you thought the last few years of reality were dystopian, that's the kind of level of dystopia in this story.
So reality, but in the future.
Yes, you know, it's a reality check. And it weaves in some of my background in AI, some of my thoughts on sentience, violence, protest, and generally the economic clash between human labor and the coming robot revolution. Not Terminator style, but more like Silicon Valley style, let's say.
Is this where
and the main characters are...
Oops, yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, is this where we say we welcome our robot overlords, quick to get in our Guido points?
You could, though. That's kind of the point of this story is like, how are we going to deal with these robots? Are they going to be our serfs, our slaves, our overlords, or something more nuanced and in between?
Mm-hmm.
And the main characters in the book have completely fascinating jobs. I mean, I went, oh, holy shit, about once every 10 pages reading this. And I think the first time I did that was when you revealed what, I'm checking my notes, what Weger's job is. Could you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's two main characters. The more main character is Olga Ramirez, nicknamed Welga. That's what all her friends call her. And Welga is an ex-Special Forces soldier turned private security performative shield. And what she does for a living is protect these wealthy funders who are kind of like the CEOs of today, let's say, who frequently get attacked by protesters who object to the kinds of projects they're funding. And they like to put on a good show. So the funders have human shields like Welga who fight random bots and things that the protesters throw at them. And the way this all works out is that everybody makes money because they're all on camera all the time.
They've monetized private security.
And protesting.
Wow.
It's even more insidious than that. The line which actually chilled me to my bones was Welga's thing about, at one point, Welga is briefing someone who's relatively new, and the line about, if you get hurt, that's some good tips. And no one wants to see anyone die, but a little drama, And I was just, oh my God. And there's so much wrapped up in that. It's the performative nature of contemporary politics and the collapse of the barrier between fiction and reality, and just so much going on all at the same time. And it chilled me to the bone.
Okay, we've already had one ordered in the chat, Divya, and people are talking about how they saw they read a review on NPR yesterday, apparently.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
That was a very good review on NPR, not just in the sense of being a positive review, but I thought that really got to the heart of what I was trying to do with this book. So I was really happy with it from that standpoint.
It was written by Fran Wild, wasn't it?
Yes, but
Fabulous.
I knew nothing about it.
Oh, how cool. Very cool. Fran is another friend, so that's awesome. I'm sorry I cut across you. I was just...
That's why there's two of us, dude. It's all good.
We're trying to deal with the chat on delay, so this is a bit less smooth than it would normally be.
How can I put this? If this was just, Welga and her colleagues doing this, like you say, weird kabuki private security thing that they do, I would have been very, very happy. But you are an author who, in my previous experience of your work, is defined by two very specific things. And the first is you're unbelievably perceptive when it comes to characters and people. And the second is you don't let up. You always try and push into some interesting spaces. And the framing narrative here of the organization that is protesting against Welga's employees, the machine hood, which you scatter bits of their manifesto through, leads the novel and the world into some really unusual places, doesn't it?
Yes. I'm trying to decide how to respond to that without spoiling things too much. But
so let's put a big spoiler warning here if you don't want to have.
Yeah, no. I won't spoil it.
Okay.
Just the opening bits, right? So, in this world of future automation, robots doing a lot of work, etc., I kind of get into a bit of technicality in terms of the types of artificial intelligences that are there. And the majority of them are what today we call weak artificial intelligence, in the sense of they're good at, doing very specific tasks. They're really just mathematical models. And I would say by 2095, we've gotten to artificial general intelligence, which is, more general purpose smart machines. But we don't yet have the Terminators and the, ex machinas, or even the ones in Her, where they're self-aware and sentient and really kind of understand their place in the world the way humans and animals do. So the machine hood kind of pops up and does something deeply uncool by the standards of 2095, which is to actually kill somebody, which is not an easy thing to do in this future. They have better medicine than we do, and they basically demand that the world give machine intelligence rights and stop doing a bunch of things that humans are doing in order to compete with the machines. So it's framed as if, we're going into a robot uprising, let's say. And the interesting thing is, in this world with so many ubiquitous cameras, nobody's really sure who the machine hood is. And so that central mystery kind of powers you through probably the first half of the book. And then things turn interesting in ways that I'm not going to spoil.
Okay.
The two kind of bits of media that I've interacted with recently that it reminded me of the most. And again, there are no spoilers here, but anyone who's watching will perhaps get an idea of what kind of things happen. There's a I have forgotten his name. No, I haven't. Hooray! Go brain. There's a Tim Moore novel called Infinite Detail, which was released and via small press last year, which is set 20 years after terrorists kill the internet, in the one part of Bristol that still somehow has a localized internet, where one character can see ghosts, and someone else is running is literally running a black market in cumin and coriander and spices, because there's more money in it than drugs at this point. And the relief effort slowly kind of expands across the world, and you see the run up to the internet being switched off. And that's a very, very drastic societal shift. That's not something which you do, but the focus on humanity in extremis and humanity as circumstances change reminded me of that an awful lot. And the other thing which it put me in mind of was the Russell T Davies drama series from last year, Years and Years. And so,
oh yeah,
and very, very much the ubiquity of technology, and how technology is bent to the will of the individual, even as the individual is bent to the will of technology, really put me in mind of that. I mean, you make an offhand reference to essentially the death of privacy in the first couple of pages. And I needed to sit and be quiet for a moment after that, because I was just like, oh my God. And yet here we are talking to you on a nominally functional video game streaming network with a couple of dozen people watching, and none of us are in the same room. So perhaps privacy is far more of a movable target than I have previously thought. And these are the kind of questions which you continually raise, and I find it fascinating that you have these characters who just accept that this is how the world is. I mean, there's an early moment where...
Well, think about it. We accept how the world is now. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, the idea of us having a chat with a friend 5,000 miles away in real-time video was the stuff of science fiction.
Yeah.
We know. We read all of that science fiction when we were high. So do you think that kind of... People always ask when you talk about near future, and by near future I mean 100 to 200 years kind of stuff, of what was the basis for your projection of what technology would look like? Did you take did you invent one specific new technology and it influenced everything, or did you look at an existing path of artificial intelligence development and kind of extrapolate, okay, this is where I think we're going to be, so that's what I'm going to set my baseline? How did you approach especially with a technical background yourself, how did you approach writing a near future technological setting?
I took a much broader view than a lot of science fiction does, I think. I did not pick one gee whiz device and carry that forward and see how that would reshape society. I decided to kind of go whole hog and look at various facets: biotechnology, space technologies, AI, medicine, and kind of put it all together. And I was really, I personally just enjoy keeping up with the latest developments of what's happening in science, especially at the cutting edge. And so, MIT has these things called M blocks they're about this big, and they're little self-assembling cubes, so they can dump a bunch of them on the floor and they figure out how to build themselves into a thing. And so I was like, what if, you take a thing like this and you carry it 75 years into the future where it becomes a consumer good that's an ordinary part of your life? How might that change our spaces and the way we interact with our environment? And similarly, I did the same kind of thing with AI. I did the same thing with the gig economy today. I took 3D printing and was like, what if instead of 3D printing being kind of a cool industrial tool and occasionally good for like school projects, it became a lot more versatile and everyone has one in their house. And you couldn't just print little plastic statues and doodads, but you could actually like print your own drugs or vaccines. And so, yeah, so there's a pretty wide array of technology, and all of it's based on something that I read or came across at some
Mm.
point that's happening, in a lab somewhere in the world today. So none of it like breaks uh, any rules of physics. There's no warp drives. There's still no interstellar travel. I'm sorry. Um, it's very grounded, and I did the same thing with privacy. I also looked at like social trends of the last 50 to 100 years, right? So with the economy, with work, with the Industrial Revolution, with privacy, where are things going? What are the trade-offs we're making? And what if I just, project that
Mm.
forward? So obviously, this is not necessarily the future we have to be headed towards. There can always be curveballs. I kind of hope that, there are twists and turns and surprises. I don't really want to be in the business of predicting the future. Um, but yeah, that's where that idea also came from.
I love how everything you're talking about, because you're pulling it from contemporary research, moves with something approaching a uniform line. There's no standout, as you say. There's no standout kind of wizard gizmo in the book where you go, and now this one works because it's magic. Everything feels remarkably grounded and realistic, and that makes a couple of the things that happen, and in particular, the role of pharmaceuticals in the book, just really mind blowing, because it just feels like, yeah, this is the baseline for what humanity is now.
Mm.
And everyone still gets takeout on Friday nights. It's just sometimes we can move 15 times faster or think too fast or all this kind of stuff. Really, really cool. And I'm really glad you
Yeah,
brought it up. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I was gonna say, one of the fun exercises I did when I was world building for Machine Head was I looked at what life was like 75 years ago, and
Mm.
I was trying to see, and even beyond, right? I was like, what are the things in our daily lives that have just persisted, in spite of these radical technological leaps that are accelerating, right, even within our lifetimes? And it's like food. So Welga's a foodie. She loves to cook.
Mm.
And it's kind of the story opens on her 35th birthday, where she's about to get booted from her performative um, bodyguard job because 35 is too old. And
Oh God!
Oh god.
Oh,
you gotta look good on camera, right?
oh
And so
man!
she's thinking she's gonna pivot into like a cool, slow, fast food movement where she uses these, body enhancing drugs to be able to cook slow food but more efficiently. And so like food, sex, and interpersonal communication, like these are the things that have just continued, right? These are the things that we all still value and want more of. And so I was trying to think of like, okay, so I have all these cool technological accelerants for the next century, but there's still these basic sort of human things that are going to persist and interact with those.
So so you like apply them? It's like this is how
Mhm.
the bucket full of cubes example would apply to sex, for example. And now that's doing some interesting things in my head. So maybe that was a bad example to roll with. But wow, I'm really looking. Hurry up and finish. So it's my turn.
I will. I promise. Yeah, the fact that she's a foodie was one of the things I loved the most, because it's your work has an extraordinary grasp of humanity. You understand what makes people like people in a way that a lot of genre fiction authors in the past have struggled with. And the moment Welga has that little food dork moment in the first few pages, I was like, oh, you're my people. I like you. This is great. I'm curious about a couple of things, actually. Cover the privacy.
Let you check your notes.
Let me check my notes
Yeah,
for a moment.
exactly. So while you gather yourself, can I jump in?
Please
with the question?
do.
Let's talk more about this privacy stuff, because
I had a feeling.
that's very much my jam. You know that. You know that. So, what prompted your thinking about how privacy would be eroded or non-existent? Was it that you looked at the current trend? I mean, literally, before we started this interview, I was chatting to you while I was posting a TikTok. So I think that's a good indication of maybe, how privacy is one of those things that is very important to us and that we value, and yet we voluntarily waive or circumvent or things like that. Was that sort of your foundation for, okay, well, in the future, we've just gotten to the point where that just isn't even a concern anymore. It's just gone.
Yeah, I see, more and more people, like you said, claim to value privacy, right? But we're just freely handing out stuff all about our personal lives in exchange for services on the internet. And some people are yelling about that and being like, but wait, this isn't fair, both from an economic standpoint and from a privacy standpoint. It's bad. But at the same time, I was also looking at, the ubiquitousness of cameras. Now that so many people have a camera in their pocket at all times, and they have a way to record what's happening, not only are they pointing the lens at themselves, but they're pointing their lenses at the world, and they're calling out a lot of injustice. So I think there's a level of transparency to be had by loss of privacy. I had an interesting discussion with someone recently where, they were commenting that in machinehood, and I think I saw this word in a review as well, that there is surveillance throughout this world, thanks to these tiny, micro drones with cameras that are just everywhere, especially in public spaces. And I was like, surveillance is an interesting word, because I think surveillance implies a power hierarchy, that one person is surveilling another.
Or many
But what
others,
I tried to put into machinehood is more like transparency, that everybody's looking at everything, including the people looking at the government and the people looking at others who are in positions of power, and vice versa. Like right now, I think we have too much of more surveillance, but we're starting to see it, right, with a lot of protests, with people filming what police are doing. So if we could have increased transparency, I think that is generally always a good thing, right? Sunlight on whatever is happening is potentially to our benefit. And so, yeah, I mean, people are becoming less and less shy about sharing their personal lives. And so if there is this added benefit of social justice and transparency as a trade-off, in addition to just sharing your TikTok videos with your friends, I could see that we might, continue to make that trade in greater and greater amounts.
Well, especially now where so much of the trend, I mean, I think we've kind of passed what I call the disruption bubble. The idea that everybody in Silicon Valley at least, was going to take new economic eyes on old existing structures and seeing how efficiency could be commoditized. We've kind of past that point now, and now we're at the point where I think a lot of people are more focused on, your surveillance example is a good one. Maybe it's more like the transparency or the democratization of structures which have traditionally been very controlled by power structures. So surveillance is an excellent example. Voting is starting to get some attention. I mean, things like distribution of food, and COVID's a perfect example. Distribution of vaccine, distribution of food, especially like I can think of examples here in the UK where the government just completely failed the small school system. And so community efforts have started turning into bigger efforts of, no, we are now going to step into a role that traditionally a government has fulfilled, and they're being entirely transparent about it. So I very much see how that was kind of like all right, let me take that to the next step. And then the kind of the next step it goes to is now we start talking about not just, we come to a baseline where we believe, well, everybody should be able to do this to everybody else, which is an interesting twist on, Orwell, if you want to really get into it. It's like where everybody is as equal as everybody else, but now there's a new everybody else. And so it kind of expands out, and you go back to having that same kind of basic in that fundamental kind of conversation about well, to quote Jemison, who is and who isn't people. But now we're applying it to synthetic life forms and synthetic forms of life.
And the other thing that really...
Which is so my jam! Oh my god!
I'm very nearly finished with the book. I will be finishing it tonight.
Good, okay.
Yeah.
Dibs tomorrow.
The thing which I find really interesting about transparency and the way that you write about it is it also becomes universality. There's a passing reference to the reassurance of knowing everyone is being watched and that you can reach out to anyone within your distributed family, which, rocking up on 365 days in lockdown...
I'm writing down that phrase, distributed family.
Really had a surprising emotional resonance. The, everyone's alone, but everyone's alone together thing turned into something far more positive and at the same time far more mutable. How can I put this? There is a real sense of tension long before there is a sense of tension. That this is a society which is capable of anything before it starts being steered towards what it does. And that feels for all the world like the kind of massive science fictional concepts which we all have to suffer through being beaten around the head with being told haven't existed for the last 50 years. So what I'm saying is, are you ready to be on a lot of shortlists next year? Because I think you're going to be.
And are you getting tired of being compared to to Asimov yet? Because I have to imagine that's the territory we're moving into.
It's hilarious. So it's hilarious to me, but I'll tell you why. So about a week and a half ago, a friend of mine from Caltech invited me to Clubhouse and said, hey, there's a group that's going to be discussing AI ethics and warfare next Saturday. Would you be willing to jump in on the conversation? Do you have an iOS platform that you can use Clubhouse on? Because I'm a diehard Android phone user. And I said, yeah, I've got my kid's old, iPad. I can use that. And so I was there, and towards the end of that conversation, or that chat, whatever. Clubhouse is weird, but
Clubhouse
as we
is
were
really
kind
weird.
of, my heart was winding down, and I was like, y'all, I gotta go home, kind of thing, right? Somebody had brought up Asimov's 3 laws of robotics as a way to ensure that the warfare machines of the future won't turn their guns back on us. And so I made a quick offhand comment, like before I leave, last words, that, I thought they were codifying slavery and that a lot of science fiction authors of today are starting to move away from Asimov's 3 laws and kind of take a more nuanced view of how we should be interacting with machines. And there was another person in the room who jumped in right before I left with one last word to me and said, most of Silicon Valley is highly enamored with Asimov and totally disagrees with what you're saying. But I happen to think you're right and we should talk more.
well, yeah.
And I was like, yes, we should. So I'm totally welcoming the people who are mashing up, Carol Chapek's RUR, Asimov's 3 laws, and the philosophical questions posed by machinehood. Like, I am happy to tackle that because I think Asimov's was a good stepping stone from RUR, right? And then I think that kind of the intermediate step that people don't necessarily bring up is like Terminator, Matrix, Hollywood's vision of AI gone wrong. And then I want to present with my book. It's like, yes, my book is definitely in conversation with a lot of these things. So I'm happy to have people make those comparisons, or at least put us in the same paragraph,
Do you want to be, so you want to be actively be having that dialogue? So what is your goal with it? I guess is my question, because we all work in genre and we know what science fiction likes to venerate, and it's a very, like, exactly as you say, it's a very historical perspective. Do you consider this your attempt to, move us actively out of that dialogue? It's like, look, we started with robotic laws, and that was okay because it was the 50s and we were learning how to program, and laws are how we approached issues like that. But
how you control the fun.
The laws were how you control the fun. Exactly. But you're right. It's been 75 years, and technology curves are exponential, and we're in a position where we just, not only do we literally need to disrupt. I hate that I've just said this, but we need to disrupt Asimovian law's influence on our thinking about synthetic life and the value we place on it. I mean, these are the types of discussions that industry are having from a fear-based perspective.
Yeah.
Because everybody's like, oh God, the robots are going to steal our jobs. They don't step back and go, but there are certain jobs we want them to steal. And it's not theft, it's redefining our society. And I don't know, there's a lot here. I don't think I actually had a point, but I agree with you. And I just and we should talk more about it after this Clubhouse.
But yeah, absolutely. The massive forced evolution in how genre fiction talks about itself, which has really begun to coalesce in the last decade, is something which is literally a lifetime and a half overdue. And I'm trying really hard to be polite here because you both know exactly how I feel about so much of this stuff, which is why this is sounding quite deliberate.
So let's talk about other work that's being done in this area that we really like Malka Olter.
Malka Olter is a perfect example. Yeah,
exactly. And infomancy and the idea of, really digging into the power behind things, the economics behind things, those unseen forces which are actually being manipulated and shaped and things like that. What are some other contemporary influences that you would cite?
Autonomous by Annalee Newitz, which was published right as I was finishing the first draft of Machinehood, and also very much in conversation with these things. Mm-hmm. Autonomous takes place about 50 years after Machinehood and could almost be read as a sequel, even though it came out before my book, or maybe Machinehood is the prequel, right, world. So Autonomous also looks at economics. It also looks at pharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. It also looks at AI. There's a lot of interesting parallels. I absolutely loved Annalee's book. I thought they did a fantastic job of interrogating the world 50 years later than my book, and obviously taken slightly different directions, but remarkable similarities in terms of certain themes and directions of taking things. So that's definitely one I would put high up there. And then probably anything by Cory Doctorow is interrogating things like
very much so.
Privacy and economics and the democratization of technology. So
Down and Out, and
he doesn't.
Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom, which changed my life.
Thanks.
It's an extraordinary novel, and I read it on a green and black Palm Pilot. Like the ones which were actually designed to look like stuff.
I have one back there.
Excellent.
Nice.
We have a little museum of old devices on the shelf behind me.
I love
should
that.
I grab it? I'll grab
it.
Please do.
I gotta see this.
All right, here it is.
Oh,
bless.
Oh, I
see, that was
that.
the full touchscreen one that I couldn't afford at the time. I think I had one that was basically a pocket-sized word processor. Right? Bless.
Oh. Good times.
Do you get a BlackBerry back there while you're at it?
I don't think we saved the BlackBerry, but we have the original iPod, and we have my old first flip phone. I still mourn the loss of my flip phone.
They're trendy again now too. Lots of people are looking for the old Nokia flip phone variety.
Yes.
Cool. So of all the things,
yes.
Oh.
No, I was trying to think of any other near future stuff that's in conversation on these particular topics that I have read. I'm sure there are. I just can't remember them off the top of my head. I'm like looking over my bookshelf here, like, does anything ring a bell?
For all that I love this particular, I mean, the only other, a lot of the examples I can think of, or the places that I interact with a lot of this right now, is in video games. I mean, we could probably talk for an entire hour about Detroit and how I was so excited for the concept of that game, and then the execution of that game infuriated me, and then the DLC controversy where everybody wanted their favorite slave back, and I was like, oh my god, and ooh, yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, well, if we're going to talk game narrative.
Yeah, please. By all means, it's totally valid prose.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a disclaimer here. I have not, like, properly played any video game other than Words with Friends and Sky Children of the Light in, like, since I had a child, basically. So over 12 years, let's say. And, but my spouse, who was working for Sony's PlayStation for the longest time.
Oh, nice.
Is deeply into games, and, you know, kind of had to do it, like, for his job. Not really, but
yeah,
but, you know,
I have to read privacy statements for my job all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I
So
have
I
to
did
watch
a lot of,
movies for
like,
work.
over the shoulder watching.
Yeah.
And I would say of the bits and pieces I saw, Near Automata, I thought, was a fabulous exploration of these questions of what it means to be human versus robot. And Horizon Zero Dawn, I thought, did an interesting exploration of that.
Oh my goodness, yes.
You know, the interplay between human and machines. So yeah, in terms of, like, game narratives, I thought those two were rather well done.
Can I jump in with another question yet?
Please do.
Near Automata triggered something in my mind because I think I'm officially described as a vintage anime fan now, because there's been so many generations of anime that I don't even recognize it anymore. But some of my favorite first anime stories were Akira, Evangelion, more narratives that really got into that question of what is human. Is it form? Is
Ghost
it
in the
function?
Shell.
Ghost in the Shell. Gosh, even Big O with Dorothy. I think her name was Dorothy Wainwright. I can't remember what her last name was. This is a topic that I think geographically has been tackled more outside of the West for a lot longer. Do you share that view?
I would specifically say Japan.
Yeah.
In part because they've been dealing with labor shortages and therefore automation, you know, much more than most of the rest of the world has.
I never thought of it that way.
I think it's at the forefront of their consciousness, right? Like, so much of robotics has come out of Japan as well because of that reason. Like, they need more labor and they don't allow much in the way of immigration, so they got to do something. So
and
robots
they were
to the rescue.
Literally forbidden from developing military technology for an entire generation, and it severely influenced their economy as a result.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to a university in Ahmedabad in India recently, and they were asking me to speak to, you know, AI and robots in science fiction in India. And I went looking, especially in the movies, because obviously Bollywood is a huge industry.
Yeah.
But they haven't done much in that space. In science fictional stuff in general, that's still mostly, I feel like, either, the province of, you know, manga and anime, or Hollywood, really. Like, I'm not even sure we could say a ton about Europe, and it just occurs to me that we never did the Space Sweepers bit.
I was just thinking exactly that. But now I'm thinking about
that. I love seeing.
But that's exactly it. I think now there's kind of this opportunity where societies which have either dealt with it historically and have come to kind of a settled position, for lack of a better phrase on it, we're seeing that conversation being had through media in different areas. Like the wave of Chinese-centered science fiction that we're tackling right now is completely different. I mean, I think it's it is not derivative, but it takes a lot of its visual clues, in my opinion, from Hollywood representations of science fiction.
Yep.
But the narratives that it uses and the issues that it centers are completely different. It's not about, I mean, even that stupid blow up volcano movie thing you watched the other day, it was about the relationship.
Called Skyfire.
Whatever.
There we are.
Whatever that piece of dreck was. It was more about the family's ability to stick together through these situations than it was about lone guy fights volcano, which is what you would get in the Hollywood version of that. Although that also happens. Because film credits are also a thing, and therefore we have to cater to many audiences. Yeah. That's another whole hour we could do. Anyway. I'm done now. But what I'm saying is I want to see a wave of Bollywood science fiction movies in the worst physically possible way. That would be amazing.
There was a Tamil movie about a sentient robot. I watched about the first 45 minutes of it.
What's it called?
Fast forwarded through the songs because that's what I always do.
Is that the one where at one point he has a rotating circle of guns around his chest and it fights an enormous robotic parrot made out of cell phones in a football stadium?
Yeah. Like there's this super cool resembling, like it looks like the thing from the end of Hero 6.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, it's called Entiran, which is basically robot in Tamil. Tamil is my home state language culture, and the star who plays the cyborg robot guy is like he's kind of like the Tom Cruise, of the Tamil Hollywood.
I love it. He has, and I say this without a shred of irony, the most magnificent hair I think I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, that's one of his signatures is that hair. Like he always has had that hair
it is
since I was
epic.
A child.
Nice.
And then there were some superhero movies I found from the northern part of the more Mumbai side, the proper Bollywood side of things. But yeah, I would like to see more science fiction. And actually, in this conversation that we were having, I made the comment that I think science fiction in India and in Indian pop culture especially would probably be more inspired by space travel than robots, because again, like with Japan, they love the robots for that particular reason, but the Indian space program is doing so well, right? And so that I think there could be like some great synergy there, right? People will want to go see ISRO people going to the moon or going to Mars, and they can make movies about that kind of thing.
Nice.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because for the life of me I can't remember it, but I think last year or maybe 2019, one of the biggest performing movies at the Indian box office was about the mission control crew for the first successful Indian mission to Mars.
Yeah, Mangalyam, I think.
Yes, I wanted to see that so badly. It was on like one screen at 11 o'clock at night for a day. Have to track that down.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Okay, I've completely sidetracked all of your questions.
You've actually covered a surprising amount of them. I'm delighted to report.
I can talk about artificial intelligence and robots and video games forever. So you have to keep me focused.
This is why there's two of us.
Yeah.
See?
It's working out. I actually had a couple of questions from the chat. Can I jump in?
Yeah, please do.
This okay, so we've covered that one already. Is there going to be an audiobook of Machine Hood? Do you know?
There is an audiobook
Ooh,
right now.
Okay.
And it has two fantastic narrators, and I got to help pick them, which I was very happy about because I choose most of the narrators for Escape Pod, and so I'm kind of opinionated.
Yeah, good. You felt technically equipped to have the conversations. Nice, excellent.
Yeah. They were like, "Do you want input?" And I was like, "Yep."
I'm like,
send me all the things.
Give me the reels. Give me the reels. Exactly.
And so, no, actually, Simon & Schuster Audio was very lovely to work with. They sent me, auditions for both the characters. So we have two different voice actors for the two different principal points of view in the book.
Nice.
And I liked all of them, but one of them definitely sounded like Welga more than the others in my head. And then for Nithya, it was interesting. All three of the voice actors were fantastic. They were great readers, but they read with a solid American accent, the way I'm talking right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Nithya is a character who's born and raised in Chennai, where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
And while she has spent a little bit of time in the US, she's back in India. And so I felt like her voice ought to have at least a hint of an accent, like maybe not a strong one, so that the US listeners don't struggle to understand what they're saying, but someone with at least like just enough to kind of clue you in that, hey, this is not an American talking to you in these chapters.
Mm-hmm.
And so I threw a name over the fence at them, and they liked her enough to pull her in. So that was
fantastic.
really cool. I was glad that they
Amazing.
responded positively to that, because I was like, how about
Good. Well, no, that's good. I mean, speaking of other whole hours we could have, is we could talk about representation and voice casting and all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they picked. No, I was gonna say they picked a Latin American for Welga, and an Indian American for Nithya's character. So I thought that was awesome. They consulted me on pronunciations, like 100% very happy with how they handled all of that.
Cool. And is that through all the usual audio channels that we could go and find that on Audible and all that good stuff?
Audible and Google Play and all of those places.
How amazing is it that audiobooks are coming out simultaneously with like first day releases now? Because that used to never be the case.
I know.
It would be the book came out, and if you were lucky, maybe they would do an audiobook in a year. But now, I mean, even just from the baseline accessibility perspective, it's huge that things are actually moving that direction. Is it something you had to push for, or was it just part and parcel an assumption?
I don't think I could push for anything, frankly. That's not how publishing works. But
I should never get a book deal. The
things.
people I worked with would hate me.
No, audiobooks are like the largest, or I should say the fastest growing segment of
Absolutely.
Fiction and even nonfiction sales. So I think the publishers themselves have recognized that it would be smart to, release in that format in an expeditious manner and simultaneously, just like with ebooks, right? The same thing has happened where it's like, oh, okay, this is what the people want. Maybe we should actually like give it to them. And so, yes, I didn't push for audiobook. I certainly was hoping that they would do one, but it's an internal decision always whether they choose to exploit those rights, as they say, legally.
This is a complete
whole other hour. That's gonna be my phrase now. That's a whole nother hour.
This is a complete sidebar to everything that we've been talking about, but I resisted getting an Audible account for a really long time, because I know what kind of personality I have, and I didn't really feel like I could afford to drop £300 a month on audiobooks. But then I'm coming towards the end of the middle, rather, of my second and final year as a Clark Award judge. And I've done a lot of book prize judging across the last couple of years. Book judging I just do for free. I go into bookshops and go,
No.
But the Audible account saved my life last year during the finalists section, because we had a relatively narrow period of time to read about 5,000 pages of book. And as you know, because you work for escape artists too, I have no free time. So the Audible account basically had all the finalists for last year's Clark dropped on it, and I was listening to them as I was doing other things, and was able to come at the text from an entirely different perspective.
I wish that was a skill I have. I really do, but I'm not able to process like multiple forms of input. I mean, we had this situation this morning. So we share an office, and I now work fully remotely from home, and Alistair has his own meetings during the week, and he was having a meeting with a friend and catching up and chatting, and I was trying to do a marketing review of a document where I literally have to read a sentence and think about all of its implications, and then read the next sentence and think about all of its implications. And just him having the conversation in the other room was, I mean, I had headphones on, I had music on, the whole 9 yards. Just that level of stimulus does not work for me. So I have tremendous envy for your ability to watch a TV show, type an email, and listen to a podcast at the same time. I would be so much more efficient if I could do that.
You see, I'll take envy, because the only other response I've ever had to that is, when I was a teenager, my dad walking in on me, listening to something, writing something, watching something with something else in the second window, and just going, I should have left you in that spaceship in the crater, and just walking back out.
Well, Marguerite, I am totally with you. I
just can't do
it.
The
only thing I can do while listening to podcasts is either drive or like chores around the house.
Like I can cook dishes, or the dishes.
I can sometimes cook. If it's a thing that I've cooked many times, then it's fine. But if I'm cooking something new, then it's like I still need most of my attention on what I'm actually doing. But my child is a lot like Alistair, and I have observed her like listening to music or watching a video and doing her artwork and texting her friends, and I'm just like, how do you focus on a thing? But she can multitask somehow, or at least cut back and forth without struggle, whereas I'm kind of like serially monogamous. Like I want to work on one thing at a time.
That's exactly it. I am serially focused, and she has like no latency between task changes. Oh, man.
See, I actually just cheat, and I tend to use podcasts as fun timers, because at the moment in the mornings I commute, which is an excuse to not jump straight from coffee into work for 10 hours. And
I've already been working for an hour. Then the coffee happens, but that's just me.
And as a result, I'm playing Ace Combat 7, which is a game which is a completely normal flight simulator until the flying wing arrives 10 minutes in, and I'm like, yes.
And then you come around the corner and there's a space elevator, and I literally heard him go, yes, from the other room. I'm like, okay.
But I listen to a half-hour-long podcast, and that's my fun timer, because at the end of that, I'm like, okay, I've done a mission, I can do a thing, I can now go do work, and I won't be trapped playing this ridiculous game for the next 10 hours, and then I won't feel bad, and that will be great. And as a complete aside to all of that,
what's one more?
One of the FMV sections I hit has this whole detail section where the royal family of one of the countries at war comes and visits the lab that you're working at and brings their dog with them. And the royal family are very, very well animated, and the dog is a still. The dog is very clearly a 2D photo of a Labrador that has been placed in this elaborately animated scene, because you see him from two angles and it's two different dogs. And I need to sit with that for a while.
Wow. I've just asked the chat if there's any more questions, though, unfortunately, based on our quantity.
No, we don't have time to unpack all of that.
It might be a while, though. I've been trying to kind of get them while we're going on. So should we pivot into... I think someone asked earlier about major non-technological or societal changes in machinehood.
Yeah, I think we touched on that a little bit with the privacy stuff, but there's also the economics.
Yay! Let's talk economics.
Which I had fun with from a few different perspectives. Again, with sort of the interplay with technological advancements affecting the economics and the way people interact. But one of the things I posited was the death of the corporation. And I did that somewhat deliberately because so much of cyberpunk and science fiction vilifies corporations. Like, it's easy to just be like, oh, the terrible corporation that does all this evil, right? I'm like, okay, what if we're in a future with no corporations? Where does the evil come from now? And so instead of corporations, you have funders, you have people with money, and then you have everybody who's trying to earn a living. And so it's all contractual and or gig based, right? Depending on how you look at it.
Or
nobody's employed by anyone. Project teams come together and then they go apart. Like, people find the people they need to work with to complete a task. So it's all sort of
distributed,
almost
structure,
like it's all very, like, a lot of the stuff I did was distributed. So So the labor force has become completely distributed in that sense. Capital is still concentrated in certain hands, but it, still has the freedom to move around, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other big thing was manufacturing. Rather than centralized factory-based manufacturing supply chains, I distributed that too,
Yeah.
right? And said, okay, like let's see how much people could just make at home, and how, now rather than reporting to the factory, and having like this big R&D team over here that's corporate and doing patents, everybody can contribute designs. It's all open, right? And then you just bid, you just pay for whatever you think is good. There's an entire livelihood just reviewing and rating other people's stuff, and also looking at the reliability of information, right? Because that's gonna that's infomocracy and everything else that's happening.
Yes.
Actually, a lot of it came to light after I wrote Machinehood. Machinehood was done by early 2019, but QAnon and everything else that's happened in the last 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pandemic, and we've seen how information and truth can be very manipulated, insecure. And so when I was trying to envision what are these sorts of gig jobs that people are going to do in the future, one of the things is, if you have expertise in a thing, you can go and rate the reliability of some piece of information, whether you think it's likely
Authentication.
or not.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I played a lot with the economics of this, and it horrifies some of my friends, because it's a very insecure future compared to like
Oh, it's a good
the
description.
idealized vision of you went to work for a corporation for your life and you had a pension when you were done. But I'm like, that's already gone. We kind of don't like what corporations are doing and the amount of influence that they have on society and government. So what if we just break that down more? Because nobody really likes that structure anyway. And kind of go into this social but also libertarian view of what the way we could empower ourselves, but also the struggles that are going to ensue because of that.
Do you use the artificial intelligence and the emergence of the conversation about synthetic personhood, for lack of a better description? Is that where you explore the negative aspects of elements like that, or are there negative social elements that get discussed as well? I mean,
It's actually more social, I would say. The AI, you know, they do their work, right? Just like the factory robots and Google and your phone does a lot of your work today. So the AIs of machinehood are still, like I said, they're kind of weak and maybe at best general intelligence, but they're still systems and tools that are integrated into people's daily lives. So instead of going to a doctor, you see a robot, but there's a person there to make you feel better, because the robot doesn't have a great bedside manner, right? And everybody kind of wants that human element. So it's that kind of thing where they're just kind of integrated into daily lives, and the economic situation kind of plays into that again in terms of new jobs that are created, right? So you get to be the doctor's assistant, the doctor's human assistant, because the doctor is no longer human. There's
So
a
the roles
nurse in
switch.
home doing elder care. There's a human who goes along with, the care bot, right? To give that extra human touch, to have conversations, to make the person feel emotionally comfortable being cared for by this device. But the device is doing the actual physical work of taking care of the person. So it's nuanced.
Now I'm thinking about sequel potential. It's like, okay, great. So that's the next step. And then we get to the point where the human element and the comfort isn't needed. And then what happens?
But I love that the roles reverse. That right now you have surgical robots. And in this world you have a robotic surgeon with a human.
Yeah. Cool.
I don't know if we'll ever get so comfortable with robots that we won't want any sort of human touch. I think we could maybe get synthetically human enough androids. But until we cross this bridge, and this is really the central question of this novel, until we cross this bridge of like, we think that they are actually sentient and feeling and thinking the way we are, right? we're always going to look at them as machines, however sophisticated they get. Like, we can anthropomorphize them in our heads, but that's not really the same as thinking of them as equal or equivalent to a human being. So I think we'll still feel more comfortable with another person, just pheromonally, intuitively, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Physically speaking. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely. Did we cover everything from the chat? I saw Wendy brought a question back up.
Yeah, we had already covered it when we were talking about. I could just go back and look, but I will double check that. In the meantime, you're a guest of honor somewhere shortly, aren't you?
Yes, a podcasting, or I should say, audio fiction guest of honor at Flights of Foundry.
Okay, whole other hour, but I'm so excited.
Fiction podcasting guest.
What I'm so excited that people are calling it fiction podcasting now, and that we're starting to bring those two things back together. It's not just audio dramas; it is fiction in all its forms.
Yeah,
we're here first.
Yeah,
Old Lady Podcast.
I'm really happy for you. That's it's about damn time that some of the work that you've done has been noticed and honoured. Are they giving you stuff? I mean, obviously it's a distance convention, so they're not going to go, here's a food token or anything, but are you on like fun panels?
They could order Divya pizza or something. I mean, come on.
Here's your pizza, Divya. Thank you.
Let's TBD. I haven't gotten a lot of details yet, but cool. You posted the Flights of Foundry link. So Flights of Foundry is an organization that's trying to help up and coming creative professionals of all stripes in genre fiction, or specifically, I guess, science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And so, I'm super excited. Like, that came out of nowhere when they were like, hey, would you be willing to be, guest of honor for this? Like, you'll probably have a bunch of panels. We might ask you to do a keynote. And I was like, okay.
Sweet.
Very flattered. I'll have to think about what I would say in a keynote, but I'm sure that would be fun.
I'm sure you would have.
I don't think there's a lot of details yet. And most importantly, I guess, for your Twitch audience here, it is free. So go register and check it out. It's
a great event as well.
Yes, I am helping fundraise for Flights of Foundry this year, actually. So I'm handling the sponsorship packages and stuff. It's a great... Flights of Foundry is the convention of Dream Foundry, which is the name of the org. And they do stuff year-round, like mentorship programs and presentations and all sorts of stuff. And like Divya said, they are for early in career people across media in genre fiction, which is really cool stuff. I'm trying to remember if I had... What else is coming up for you?
Which was going to be my last question.
Okay, fine. Sorry. I'm jumping ahead.
Go ahead.
Some little things. Tuesday, March 9th at, let me check my calendar. There's been so many things. At, I believe, 10 a.m. Pacific time, I will be on the World Builders Twitch stream talking to those fine folks about machinehood and who knows what else, whatever comes up in conversation. Then on the 14th, at 7 p.m. Pacific, I'm going to do a reading with Juliet Wade, who is another fine science fiction author, at the virtual, or I shouldn't say at, I don't think they're doing full convention, but for virtualized FogCon, which is a regional convention in Northern California. But the reading is free. It's an hour long. Juliet, I assume, will also be reading from their latest book, and so will I. And then on the 26th, and I don't know if they've put out like a link or details. I've had a lot going on the last couple days, so I haven't had a chance to check.
Vamp through your email.
Mysterious Galaxy Books, which is my local bookstore, the localist science fiction bookstore I have, is going to host me in a conversation/celebration book release with Arkady Martine, Primi Mohammed, and Adrian Tchaikovsky.
Oh,
so I'm
brilliant!
Really looking forward to that, hanging out with them. So check that out. Go to Mysterious Galaxy Books and check out their events, and hopefully there is a link live at this point. But that is Friday,
I think I've seen a link,
and I don't know what time yet.
I thought I saw Adrian talking about it. Adrian and Primi are definitely lineup. Yeah, that's really fun stuff.
It should be UK time friendly, since we got to have Adrian there, and he's also in your region of the world.
That is correct.
Yes, indeed.
Slice.
exactly.
So I'm excited for that. And then there are a couple other things that are being worked out that I'm very excited for, but are not yet set in stone. So I'm not going to talk about it because where I come from, that would jinx it. So.
Well, I mean, look what you did to the Twitch stream tonight. You said it was going to be reliable.
I accept no responsibility for Twitch's failure to do anything other than what its name suggests is all it's capable of.
Okay. Awesome. Where can everybody find you? We will put all the links, of course, in the show notes.
Yeah, you can mostly find me on Twitter as @DivyasTweets. You can also find out about all my stuff on my website, sbdivya.com. If you want a little sneak peek, not at the book itself, but some excerpts from the Machine Hood's manifesto, go to machinehood.com.
Ooh, I didn't know that one.
There's just a handful of lines there that'll give you a taste for some of the themes of the book. I'm hoping when I have a little more time this month to start putting some more goodies up there, especially for people who have bought the book or read the book, to dive a little deeper. And Instagram, I'm trying to be on there more at @SBDivya.
Get your daughter to do it. Give her your account. There'll be tons of content. You'll be fine.
Oh my gosh, no, she's too little yet. I'm keeping her off social media for hopefully a few more years. And lastly, as I mentioned, I am recently on Clubhouse as s.b.divya, because if you search for Divya on Clubhouse, it is ridiculous. There are like 100 people on there with my name already. Apparently, it's a very popular name in my generation and subsequent generations in India, because my parents knew nobody with my name. It's sort of like my husband. My husband's named Ryan, and his mom was like, I didn't know any Ryan, so I wanted to name my kid Ryan, and now there's, a bajillion of them everywhere. So same thing happened with me, but in that country. But yes, Clubhouse, one of the cool things about Clubhouse, I will say, is it's global. Like, I see rooms with titles in Korean and Chinese and Russian scripts. Like, I can't read what the name of the room is, but I think that's awesome. Conversations are happening in all kinds of languages at all times of day throughout the globe. So that is definitely a thing that has potential. I know Twitter is looking to kind of jump into a similar platform. So hopefully we'll see this like conversational audio medium go good places. I know there's a lot of issues already, as there are with anything new on the internet. But I've had a couple of good interactions, and
That's good.
you gotta be careful, as with anything.
Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting new way to interact with each other.
I was really hopeful that accessibility tools would have been built in from the beginning, and that does not seem to be the case. There doesn't seem to be inherent captioning, but that's one of my biggest problems with TikTok as well. Is that's literally the most labor-intensive part about creating content on those platforms.
YouTube recently turned theirs off.
Yeah, well, whole other hour-long conversation. Exactly. Which could literally, I seriously think I need an emoji that says whole other hour long.
I think we should get one.
That sounds good.
Divya, this has been amazing. Thank you, not just for the incredible work you do week in, week out, but for showing up and being a profoundly fascinating interviewee. This has been great.
Thank you for having me. This is super fun. I always enjoy talking to both of you. And like Marguerite, we could have many, many hours long conversations about all of these things.
Yes, and
all topics I love to talk about.
We will definitely have to do some more of that. That sounds good. Okay, we are going to take a break, everybody, to say goodnight to Divya and maybe hopefully let the leg get shoved and get my Pop-Tart.
And mine.
And then we will be back. So we will chat with you all in a few minutes. Goodbye from the future. We'll be right back.